Hello and welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. I have a special episode today because we are going to be breaking down the artificial intelligence and the artificial intelligence sector related stocks. Just talk about the industry, the fundamentals, what are the facts behind it, and let you make your own decisions. Neither my guest nor myself are going to be making any specific bullish or bearish calls or specific trade ideas here. This is more just to give the audience a general education of what's going on in one of the more dynamic sectors of the market. And before we get into it, I would like to introduce my guest, Murphy McCann. He's a colleague of mine at Spearhead Advisors, and we are going to be discussing the potential and the risks of the AI industry. Murphy, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm a portfolio manager at Spearhead Advisors. And prior to that, I've done a few different things. I was at PIMCO for about 20 years. Part of that time was as an analyst on the high yield desk. The other things I've done since my tenure at PIMCO, I was the CFO of an investment platform called iTrust Capital that allowed IRA investors to invest in crypto. I also am an investor in the world's first 100% off-the-grid solar-powered data center company. And I also helped found a software company called Kingfield that is going to rewire a lot of the back office for Wall Street.
All right, and now we'll get on to the meat of this video, which is AI. But just as one more kind of disclosure, we are not going to answer specific investment related questions in the comments. If you have anything specifically about that, just contact us directly. But now let's first start with the potential of the AI technology. Where are we now on the tech cycle for AI? Is this the early innings of the innovation here, or are we close to the peak of expectations?
Yeah, I feel like we are in the early innings of this game. If we're like in the first or second inning, there's been a lot of development going on for well over a decade in this realm, but it's really kind of come to a head in the last couple of years. ChatGPT was a really significant product to be released to the market. And what I would say is that there's the biggest thing that I want to tell you at the get-go is that there is a lot of computing power that's going to be necessary to really have this industry operate and flourish. It's just a fact. And the way that AI is programmed, this is very simplistic, but you have models, what people call models. Models might be trained to read a certain type of thing. It might be really good at reading chemistry textbooks. It might be really good at reading Dear Abby letters. It might be good at reading SEC filings from public companies. Whatever it is, these models are out there and they require a lot of computing power in and of themselves. Where the industry is now sitting, I wouldn't even say heading, but sitting, is really AI is actually driven a lot now by what they call agents. And what an agent does is it's kind of an AI model in itself, but really what it does, it's trained to go hit like several different models for the answer to a question. We all know ChatGPT. You say, hey, what is the prognosis for, I don't know, any topic in the future? And it'll go and it'll print out of several paragraphs on where it thinks what the answer to your question is. Well, you can either do that by hitting one model and go for the answer, or you can get an agent that says, I want to know what this model, who's the expert in this thing, says. I want to know what this other model says. It'll go and it'll go and ping all these various models, assemble all those answers, and then pick and choose within the answers that it gets what it finally outputs to you.
So like an example would be like you could say, write a query about what Nick Pardini would think about the economic future of Spain.
Right. So it would go pick all the, it would go to an AI model that knows about Nick Pardini. It would go to an AI model that knows about Spain and maybe a couple others, young, handsome men in Orange County, what they think. And it would start to compile all those answers and then pick and choose from all those answers what the final answer is that they give to the user. So not only do you have the computing hashes that are happening with regard to each model, but you also have the additional hashes happening at the level of the agent. It just, I like to tell this story just in of goals or capabilities that AI can perform. And we're basically, I'll summarize it by saying we're in a 5-level development cycle where level 1 is basically, it's what we know as ChatGPT. It's what they call large language models. They can understand text, and then they can spit back text. It's really, a lot of the software is built around what is the likely next word of the sentence that needs to get said, what it's all generated on, and really what the goal is. So it's reading text, answering back in text. And those models were okay like a year ago or 2 years ago. They keep getting better and better every day. And to the point where a lot of people are using them with varying degrees of success. But I'm here to tell you that they're only going to get better because a lot of the stuff that these models are pointed at, the data sets themselves aren't necessarily perfect. And so as level 1 grows up, you'll see further improvements. But the other really big watershed thing that was announced a couple of weeks ago. So when OpenAI did their most recent funding round roughly a month ago, they were talking about where they are in their development cycle, but the watershed thing that they came out with was that they're actually getting their models to do what they call level 2 stuff, which is reasoning. It can actually kind of better understand problems and solutions and reason its way through it in a way where level 1 is just kind of reporting. It'll just give you an essay back on what the answer to your question is. This higher level will actually do some critical thinking around what the constraints are around the potential answer and kind of the complexities in terms of like importance of certain ideas within the problem or the question. And they were again, this was a really big time for them in terms of the development cycle. It was another milestone from their perspective.
So we're at level 1.5, let's just say on the 5. Yeah. So like, what is something that level 2 is going to look like that we would use in our daily life? We know ChatGPT is a good example of level 1 in our day-to-day life. So like, what's an example of something that an individual or business owner would use level 2 AI for? How would it be like? What would the end user product look like?
Yeah, it would basically, a good example would be, I mean, if the thing could play tennis, right? And if where ChatGPT would just say, hey, you're playing tennis, hit the ball back, and make sure it's within the bounds of the other side, and those are the rules and whatever. Level 2 might say, hi, my player's in the far right corner. He backed me in the far left corner over here. Perhaps I should zing one straight down the sideline so that I force my opponent to run for the ball. It can solve those kinds of things where there are constraints. You're trying to win. You don't want to hit it back to the person because that would make you lose. So it can kind of reason through and pick through.
Like level 1 is a news reporter. Level 2 is like a coach.
Yeah, type of thing.
And then what about levels 3, 4, and 5? Like what are those going to be?
Well, I would say and again, that's all the view of the guys at OpenAI. There's other people working on AI related stuff, but the industry kind of coalesces around level 3 being agents. Well, we already know about agents doing research, but agents looking for various pieces of information and actually taking action. So they take action. And there's examples of that. I'd point to Palantir, right? Palantir it's not ready to actually make the call to the troops to go fight the battle, but Palantir's, some of the products that I've looked at, again, as a civilian, talk about it being able to orchestrate and make decisions around battlefield operations. Whereas the next level would be to have that agent actually be able to instruct various armies to move forward, move back, bring supplies, bring whatever. That's kind of the next level. That'd be level 3. Level 4, that's really, I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing to think that AI will start designing to solve problems. They talk about the innovators. And then level 5 is just organization. It can actually run an organization, a company, a government, any kind of group of humans that need to execute certain things. It can actually do all of that and coordinate it. So,
and like, what do you think the timeline is on this?
Not being responsible for making a exact prediction, I think that there are a lot of people that say that we're going to be level 1 and 2 being really a milestone for replacing most people's desk jobs. If you're at a desk doing computer work, they talk about being able to take over almost any desk job within kind of the next 5 years. And models are actually coding themselves now. You can start to imagine how the development cycle is actually going to shrink for a lot of these things, and going forward, probably achieve them faster than we otherwise would think.
Yeah, an example is the progress of
Awesome.
LLMs that we have here is kind of OpenAI's 0.1 compared to ChatGPT 4, and its accuracy ratings for solving certain science problems has gone up quite a bit. Like for ChatGPT 4, they got about 40% of chemistry problems right, and now it's up to about 64
Yeah.
0.7%. Physics problems, they're at 60% it previously got right now. It's at 93. And with biology, it's gone up from 61.6 to 69.2. It's still not at the level that you can use it as a full professional replacement. The hallucination rates are still high, but the scope of the improvement is noteworthy.
Yeah, I agreed. And it's just the strides are coming really quickly. And that's one of the things that Sam Altman talked about when they did their roadshow about a month ago. The strides are coming quicker than thought.
Yeah, and the next thing we're going to talk about is like the profitable end use cases. Like this technology sounds exciting and you hear a lot of headlines and a lot of news stories, but like what is this thing actually going to do in terms of impacting our lives? And there's a lot of things. One, and even level 1 is doing this. AI can help you do research on topics. If you're in school still, it can do your homework. It can help you write business plans. It can help you write letters and a bunch of other things. But given a high error rate, you always have to verify it. But that's kind of the first level of things. It can write you personal and business emails. This is particularly helpful for people who are not as socially skilled. They can make you sound a lot more friendly than you naturally would and help ease a lot of communications. The third point, which I think is the most critical one for the macro economy, is that AI can reduce the white collar workforce and it can replace a lot of jobs. Like, say, if you run a law firm, instead of having 10 lawyers in your law firm, you can have AI do a lot of the work. So now you only need 2 lawyers that used to take 10 lawyers. And even if it doesn't go to zero, just by that level of power of reduction of headcount has severe macroeconomic implications. Before I get into some of the other points, do you have anything to say on these first 3 applications for AI?
Yeah, again, there's a lot of people that doubt whether or not this is going to be a profitable venture. And if you look at all of these things, there are definitely profits built into all of them in terms of and gaining competitiveness. So I don't know. I like to kind of poke fun at the metaverse. I'm not really, I never, it's just, if people are looking to that as like an example of how profitable AI can be, they're kidding themselves.
Yeah. And then other things like AI can create pictures from scratch. The most notable example are the thumbnails on many of the videos. I mean, I do some edits and touches to them, but a lot of it is made with the help of AI. It can make movies from scratch outright. It could recognize facial expressions. It could create medicine and medical solutions tailored to people's DNA and possibly replace lots of doctors. And it could advise on military strategy. And AI can code. So learning to code might not be the best way to move up the social class ladder nowadays because the AI can code itself. And then, of course, because of that, AI can write AI. Do you have any comments on the implications of AI being able to code at the same level, if not better than software engineers?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's if you think anyone who's a doubter on the profitability of these AI ventures just needs to think about how expensive computer programmers are. And I mean, they're hundreds of thousands of dollars ahead, right? And just wiping them out in droves accretes so much profit to the bottom line of whoever is using the software and all the rest of it. I mean, all of these things to have a video editor, right? Go through live shot video and whatever it is that they're trying to
I mean, I've
communicate
used
with.
it for this
Yeah.
channel. You probably noticed that a lot of dead noise and a lot of me saying ums is gone from the newer videos. That is the help of AI editing.
There you go. I just, and all of that takes a lot of work by people that just doesn't need to be done anymore. There's going to be, again, this is where I'm start to talk about the human race a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if you were, I listened to a panel with a bunch of AI gurus on it the other day, and they were all asked to give advice to college kids and what they should study. And the first guy said, don't even learn coding at all. Just go straight to AI and it'll just do everything for you. And then the next guy said, no, you actually do need to know how to code so that you actually really know what the AI software is doing and how it's constructing it. And to me, it was a more thoughtful answer. And but the truth is, it's going to kind of be like a really good student would be today, where you need to do your research. You need to think about what you've been able to find out and how to present it, but you might use GPT to help you do that. Get to a good answer. You're going to get to it more efficiently, and it's going to take you less time. So it's going to help you net at the end of the day. I just think there's a lot of profit in AI and the various ventures that are happening. There's another thing I listened to recently about how with some of the models being developed, when the developers realized the power of their product, there was a panel that was just talking about, oh, we've got a bunch of 10x type opportunities in front of us to develop based on what we've seen so far and the things that we've been working on. So there's a lot out there.
And so a lot of this is going to require infrastructure build out, which is the step one. That's kind of where you're seeing a lot of the initial hype involved with AI investing is in the initial build out of the server farms and the chips and the technological infrastructure and the electricity usage. So like what are your thoughts on the build out process of the AI infrastructure and what has been done so far and what is yet to be done?
Yeah, so again, with the lack of computing power out there to run these models, you have to have a big infrastructure build out. And it not only hits the tech and computer equipment industry, but it also hits the electric grid and the builders of power plants and the public utilities as well. Oracle, I mean, just big announcement. They're going to spend $100 billion, and there's a big piece of that that's going to go towards a data center that's going to have 1,000 megawatts of power. So they're basically going to build their own nuke to power their own data center. That's the scale that they're talking about with one of their projects. And they've slated $100 billion to get spent. I mean, just if they were just to do that one nuclear powered project, that would probably say on the outside, that would be somewhere between 5 to 10 billion for the reactor. And then the rest would be a data center. But just think I would think that the data center piece of that would not even be close to what the power cost was. And they're going to print that 10 times over. Like it's massive. Amazon, 150 billion was an announcement that I read. Microsoft and OpenAI, 100 plus billion project. Google hasn't, I've seen lots of announcements of new projects, just nothing formalized in terms of total for the next 5 years. Meta's going to spend, if you look at their CapEx numbers in their financial reporting, and if you look at some of their comments, they're going to spend 50 plus billion alone just next year. So there's a lot of money being spent on this, and how much is going to go to the tech company versus that a lot of it's going to go towards tech as well as power. Big money being spent.
Let's talk now about the risks. Like what can possibly derail investments in the AI space? The first one really is just the hallucinations, which I've mentioned before. For those who aren't familiar with AI language, hallucination is when a ChatGPT or a similar AI program will just make something up instead of giving you the correct answer for a query. And depending on the topic, even with the most recent rounds of the Jeep LLMs, it's still about a 10 to 30% error rate. So that's why you can't really fully replace white collar office workers or academic researchers with AI, or you can't simply just do your homework assignment and take it for granted that the GPT will get it right because of these error rates. And these will get better over time, but the question is, how long will they take to get better? And what is the thing that's blocking? Is it really just simply a computer power problem, or is it a way that the AI is designed to learn? That's one risk. The second one is the peak of inflated expectations. I think I might do a separate video about the Gartner hype cycle, but it's the idea that every technology follows a predictable path. First, it's kind of like in the frontier and nobody knows about it. Then people get more and more excited about it, and valuations often get ahead of what it can actually do and the optimism of the technology is way farther ahead than what its real capabilities are within the next several years. And so it reaches this peak of inflated expectations where everybody is promising the world and expecting greatness, but the tech is not ready to deliver yet. And as a result, that gap of expectations to reality causes investors and people who follow the technology and businesses looking to apply it to get disappointed. And so they cut back on spending on it or lower their outlooks, and valuations drop. And there's a trough of disillusionment that people kind of given up and said, oh, yeah, this was overhyped. It never worked out. And then you have the slope of acceptance where people gradually get back on to using the technology or investing in it and implementing it as it ends up delivering on what it was promised. Sometimes it makes it all the way back in terms of the expectations, like the internet's a good example of that. Other technologies like 3D printing never really got back to the same expectations they had, say, in 2011, 2012. But most technologies go through this cycle in certain degrees, and some people think that AI and especially is kind of at that near that peak of, especially the LLMs are at this peak of inflated expectations, and and therefore the industry sentiment may need to be reset. The other one is there's concern about the pricing power of computing power and chips weakening. The supply shortages of chips are starting to get normalized. You're starting to see people renting server space and computing power at very high discounts compared to this time last year. And there's some signs of the chip pricing power not being as strong. Do you have any comments about this one, Murphy?
The thing that I can say is that in the world of data centers, there's a lot of minutia to the pricing. If you were to really truly follow what's going on as a big user of real heavy compute power, that's one thing that can kind of lead people to kind of infer the wrong things about the industry. The data center world has also gone through a patch of it's odd. You had the Bitcoin miners all fail and as Jerome Powell started lifting rates, and a lot of people took it, other players took it in and created data center companies out of it. So they were able to actually get fairly cheap parts and drive down the rates for some types of services. So the big question is how does it affect NVIDIA and the demand for their chips, the new ones? And it kind of remains to be seen. I mean, there's plenty of demand for Blackwell. There's how much an H100 goes for is perhaps another story. We all know as the new model comes out, the other models get less expensive and need to be cleared into the market at lower prices. To me, if you look at the demand from the big players in the space, and if you look at the fact that NVIDIA is just on the precipice of this new product release that is really revolutionary in a lot of ways, then you've got plenty of demand for the likes of NVIDIA to keep chugging away at the rate that it's forecasted to. I think the street is doing a fairly careful job, and they've kind of caught up to the game in terms of what AI is going to demand of NVIDIA. So I feel like there's not going to be too many downward surprises based on just the forward demand profile and the big players involved, and the fact that they're releasing new products instead of just resting on their laurels on old ones.
Yeah. And then some of the other risk factors is extreme valuations, particularly in the venture back side of things. You have a lot of companies are just putting AI in their press releases or their earnings reports just to kind of help boost their stocks, even if they may not be doing directly what was considered truly to be AI, like Murphy mentioned earlier. And also the excitement about it has just bid up valuations, and so therefore the potential may already be realized in the market. The next thing is AI as a utility, which is really this idea that if you look at other technologies in the past, such as the development of commercial air travel or railroads or the ISPs, for example, for the internet, or the airlines for the airplane industry, or the people who've constructed the railroads. Yeah, people did use the railroads a lot more after they constructed it. It revolutionized people's lives. There's a lot of efficiencies to be gained in the economy. Same with the development of automobile infrastructure and the fact that we can fly anywhere around the world and get there within 24 hours has been major boost to living standards and economic development and innovation. However, the companies who provided those services or built that infrastructure didn't really get the high ROI as hoped in the beginning. And maybe the gains from AI aren't going to come from like a single company selling an AI package of software, especially since there's a lot of different ways these things can be built. And so there's going to be a lot of room for competition. The question really is the gains just going to be from every business in the economy, whether it's big S&P 500 companies or small business owners, collecting a bunch of real savings from not having to hire as many people or getting a lot of tasks done faster than some big company who's just making money selling all these services to all the businesses. It could be a very real possibility that all the gains from AI are simply just more widespread across the economy in the form of higher net profit margins for businesses across every sector.
If it's not like the railroads, some of the railroads did famously poorly, right? They would build a track from nowhere to nowhere and nobody would ride it. And then they'd throw up their hands and say, oh my God, there could be, same as I wouldn't characterize all pipelines the same. You can build a pipe from one end to one oil field to a refinery. If the oil field's going to go down in 10 years, that pipeline is going to be worthless, right? So there will be a lot of hits and misses in terms of investment here, right? There's going to be a lot of ponies in the race, and not all of them are going to finish. Not all of them are going to do well. And it's interesting. I mean, it's a great question. Who's actually going to benefit the most? The guys who built the infrastructure, or the end users, or the equipment makers selling to the railroads, the so-called railroads? It's a good question.
Yeah, and also I think eventually there's the possibility that AI evolves from the people building the infrastructure to those who develop specific software applications. For example, like paralegal bot, who will basically be a turnkey soft AI package that you can buy, who will do the job of what a paralegal used to do.
Right. And there will be training these large language models is actually fairly intense, and you end up in a lot of cases building very specific tools to do very specific things, right? So in all of that, the market for providing these services is going to have to get rational about its pricing. If you're going to build a very specialized AI model for a very select number of customers, that handful of customers is going to have to pay for it. Otherwise, the developer is just not going to profit from it. So I think there's going to be a lot of different gradations. Obviously, the lucky junior high student who got ChatGPT for free to do his or her homework is a huge beneficiary, right? They put nothing into it and they got a lot out of it. I think there's going to be various levels of success in this. You're going to see a lot of very specialized models, very specialized development for certain types of activities, certain very general tools, very broad tools, like GPT is really good at kind of a lot of different question and answer type work, but GPT is only as good as the data that's behind it and that it's trained on. So is it going to be the be all to end all where it knows everything about everything and can give you the right answer? And is it going to do it for free? I highly doubt that. But you might get the not so great version of GPT for free. And then if you want fewer hallucinations, you'll pay for it.
Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about then are companies tied to the AI trade. Do you have like some of the notable ones include NVIDIA, Salesforce, Palantir, Microsoft, due to their partnership with OpenAI, are commonly known as like the big boys in the AI space. There are others too, but like, what are your thoughts really about what some of these larger companies are doing in the AI space now?
Yeah, so I feel like I said earlier, there needs to be an infrastructure build out still. That's really a critical thing that has to happen. So the NVIDIAs of the world, and I would include memory chip makers, I would include chip equipment makers, the whole semiconductor chain is going to do really well in the near future, or continue to do well, honestly. NVIDIA just came out with earnings. There was no surprise. There was no disappointment. They keep plowing along. The whole semi stack is going to be impacted by this build out. And then you've got the equipment, the software guys. You've got guys like Microsoft who are repackaging GPT. They're building GPT into various aspects of their software. I mean, we all know what Microsoft is, into Excel, into Word, etc. They've got their own CRM tool. Then you've got Salesforce. Salesforce is a really interesting place to think about AI because it basically sits in the middle of a sales organization. which also in a well-run company interfaces with finance and accounting and purchasing and you name it. They're kind of the central hub for a lot of things. And to be able to build AI tools that attach to Salesforce or are embedded within Salesforce's architecture, I just feel like that ground is ripe for the types of things that AI can do. And then you got companies like Palantir who are on the bleeding edge of, again, their software can orchestrate a battlefield. It's at least the stuff that I've seen, and really highly, again, for this day and age, very highly automated intelligence and kind of actionable software for large organizations. They have their own special sauce and their own customer base and have done crazy from a valuation perspective. But the underlying guts of what they're building is absolutely like at the cutting edge of what can be done. And so there's kind of like a mix of a lot of different companies. I looked at a company the other day that built a tool that actually attaches to Salesforce and does marketing. It does lead, but it's got a database of contacts. It can reach out to them. It can host video conferences with large groups of people and track their reactions and do follow up with them and ultimately get them to be real true sales leads. And any kind of thinking automation, I guess it would be, it's all of those functions are only going to get better in the next years. And these companies will start to churn out more and more productive, more and more specialized products. You talk about automating warehouses. You talk about try automating a nursing home, right? Where you have machines that can come actually take care of people, deliver their meds to them, talk, etc. They're getting to be really good in terms of their ability to interact in a human way and to do more human things.
All right. Well, with that, do you have any final comments on AI and the impact on the markets or the economy?
Well, with the markets and the economy, I feel like this space and anything that gets kind of the kiss from the market in terms of whether or not you're involved in this AI revolution, it's going to kind of operate as its own entity within the overall market. Maybe the handoff from hardware right now to software becomes more pronounced. There's lots of things that could happen. But I mean, if NVIDIA catches a cold, if the stock catches a cold, the rest of the market shouldn't react in total. I mean, there's certain names that should, but I feel like if you look at if you look at correlations start to play out between NVIDIA and things that aren't related to it, I know that those could be really good buying opportunities. And in terms of valuations, again, NVIDIA sits there with kind of a low 30s PE. You've got Salesforce that sits there at kind of like a low 20s PE. Are these things overly expensive? In the context of the dot-com bubble, I would say no, not even close. And does that mean that they're going to remain at these prices? It depends if their earnings grow into it. One of the things that you have to understand is that with regard to the computer hardware, this stuff has a 3 to 5 year operating life. So if we are going to make this massive build out over the next however many years, you got to know that not all of it's not just going to drop off at the end. You've got this latent sort of replacement cycle that's going to happen with the data centers that will continue to power a lot of the equipment makers. And so that's another big thing to keep in mind. I don't think it's just this monolithic thing that just like, I mean, if you remember the tech bubble, market ran up into Y2K. Everybody was employed doing all kinds of Y2K jobs. There's lots of computer equipment getting built. There was also a lot of telecom equipment getting developed at that point too. And when the tech bubble crashed, it was really dramatic. I don't think we're in that kind of situation right now at all. There's plenty of reasons to believe that this isn't just like 2000 all over again. Fast forward several years, we'll see what the cards end up showing us. But anyways, those are just some thoughts in terms of the market for people who think, oh my God, NVIDIA, blah, blah, a $3.6 trillion company. I mean, if you look in the context of...
It is worth more than the entire market cap of the countries of France and Canada.
Well, let's just see how this plays out. I mean, you've got a heck of a lot of demand for their chips out there. That's also a comment on what you think about France's economy and the companies within France's public markets. So
yeah, it could be a combination of one being undervalued and the other being over.
Yeah, again, I'm not here to render an opinion on NVIDIA other than just to give context of where the valuation is versus other markets that people might thought were related.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, Murphy. And thank you guys all for joining us on this presentation. Just again, nothing in this is investment advice. Please do your own investment research. We're not really making any bullish or bearish calls on any of the companies mentioned. If you have any more direct, specific questions about investments or financial things feel free to reach out to us either through my website or via email. And yeah, if you guys also want to bring Murphy back on a live stream, because we're going to do probably another one of these for the nuclear power sector coming up in early 2025, please write that in the comments, because we could possibly just make this a more interactive experience if the audience has some interest in that. And with that, thank you everybody for watching.